What's good, fellas? Thanks for tuning in and welcome to a new episode of Metal Mixing Guide Podcast. Today we will try to recreate the tone of Red Before Black album by Cannibal Corpse. Before we will start, I'd wanted to give shout out to my friend Tobias Emmerichs, also known as Suffocator, the one who helped me with guitars. He actually did full instrumental cover of Code of the Slashers. So please show him some love and check it out following link in the description. If you want to know more about recording path, it will be mentioned in the description of that video. By the way, our friend recently hit 2,000 subscribers, and if we can make that number bigger, I would greatly appreciate that. So without further ado, let's get straight to the point of this video. So just as always, we are going to start from rhythm guitars. We have 4 of them with pretty much the same settings on board. So let me show you what's going on with one track first. Revolver 4 in the first place. Screamer with maxed out tone and volume to get slightly more focused and richer sounding. And speaking of amp, it's XXX2, the only one that seemed to have proper distortion. Even though we're gonna use external impulse loader for cab simulation, it's still critical to keep this RIR2 module in chain. There's little glitchy thing about this preset, but I'll explain it later. Next thing, custom made impulse loaded with KFIR. This one is pretty complex match of original guitar tone and panning caused by difference between left and right channel. So left side contains main part of the tone, while right one is more like low end bleed. Just as always, you will find this impulse as well as all the others together with all useful stuff in the additional pack for this guide. Valhalla room reverb right after, just to add some short roomy response. It's very subtle, so you probably won't even hear the difference with or without effect. Fab filter Saturn in clean tube mode will give us some nice crisp on highs. Last element in chain is CLA 76, making sound a little more beefy and shit. Now going back to the glitch thing. Preset seemed to have lower volume when loaded the first time. Let me copy this track in order to simulate this case. See, new track is not as loud as it should be. To fix this, just turn Revolver off and on. Now it's all good again. You don't have to do that every time you open the project unless you decide to create additional tracks or reload preset. Just keep that in mind. Second track is exactly the same thing in only exception of third plugin, which I only used to reverse the panning. We cannot use channel panner for that purpose anymore. Now both tracks go to main guitar double bus, where we have limiter, just to protect our stems from clipping. Now second pack of guitars. Completely same processing for both channels as well as processing of related bus. The only difference from main double is the fact that I actually used panning on channels. This way we only leave main part of the tone, and technically it will make this pack little wider, so that's what name of the bus stands for. So that's pretty much it. Once everything is recorded, make sure you use at least 0.2 seconds value on impulse loaders as well as oversampling on Saturn units. This will provide you with clean results. During this guide you will see me using values as low as 30 milliseconds. This helps me to have more CPU power to film this stuff. Plus it's not really important on audio recording stages as well as MIDI programming. Use higher values only for mixdowns. Use batch export mode. Choose both buses marked for export and print the stems. For this arrangement we're gonna use 2 lead guitars. Check this shit. So when it comes to processing, we use same chain as rhythm. The only difference is that now we don't use Saturn, and BX control is now used to solo the mid part of impulse. This way we will get equal mixture of both left and right parts of the tone. And I also used Pro Q in front of the chain, just to make DI signal little smoother. Same goes for harmony guitar. And I also used this octave lead track. It's basically main lead guitar pitched whole octave down. This additional layer will give us some sort of octave or flavor. Processing of this channel is the same as on rhythm guitars except for BX control settings, mid solo here as on other tracks. And that's it for leads. Same batch export thing as we did on rhythm guitars, use channels with export markers in their names. Time for bass. First thing is the sampler, Contact 5 in 8 out mode. Here I use my custom bass library, more specifically, Update Patch Automatic 5. This means that notes will be chosen automatically with priority for 5th string, and unlike the main library, we don't have to write key switch patterns. This library is completely free. You can download it following link to promo video in the description. There you can also learn more about how it works and get some free signature tones as well. Down below you will also find another link to MMG number 23 where I explained what those automatic patches are using more words. Anyways, as I said I use Automatic 5. Output configuration and patches will be in the additional files for this guide in case if you need it. Speaking of MIDI programming, I use 127 velocity for even hits and combination of 110 and lower velocity levels. So we're alternating between hard downstrokes and main downstrokes together with main upstrokes. Last section of this piece is mostly alternating between main upstrokes and downstrokes. That part is pretty fast and I wanted to have some sort of alternate picking sounding. On top of that I used noise trigger with 105 velocity level. Later we will cancel part of this noise out of signal to make overall performance little more glued and natural. I already cancelled all the noise during production of this library, that's why we want to add some of that back. Now let's go for routing. I use all 4 output channels of contact. First one is output for notes from 6th string, another one is for 5th string, next out is combination of higher 4 strings. Last output is just for noise. All these channels then go to Chrono's sum bus, so different strings will sum back to one track with bus processing on top. And now this bus separates to 5 FX channels for parallel amplification in real time. So I use FX sends for this purpose. It's like having 5 outputs at the same time, which is not possible in Cubase 5. Obviously we don't need main output of this bus anymore, so I turned it off. Then these channels go to bass sum bus to form proper DI tone. So first thing I did is correction impulses for 6th and 4th string channels. Purpose of those is to eliminate spectral difference between strings using 5th string tone as a reference. Then I use multiband compressors to take control on outstanding lower mid-range and keep reamping processing from being dirty. 4th string also seemed to have additional EQ to get rid of unwanted lows. It sounded sort of muddy. There is also equalizer on noise track, makes it smoother. In this case we don't really use 6th string, so let's loop short fragment which use both 5th and 4th strings and check out the difference. Now all 4 tracks go to Chrono's sum bus with overall DI correction in the first place. Some multiband compression right after, just to glue things together. Another one will compress first 2 bands and expand 3rd and 4th to really emphasize the attack. Another EQ to reduce boxiness on mids. And then I used denoiser with these settings. I used continuous noise trigger with same 105 velocity value to get proper noise snapshot. If you don't want to use denoiser, just use lower noise values, maybe around 50 or 60, should be quiet enough. Now signal splits to 5 different channels with different amps on board. I know that Alex used totally different ways to get his tone, but we can't really follow that, just because source performance is so different. We obviously have different DI tone which I can't replicate as I don't have any access to it. Another thing is the fact that Alex plays with fingers, while Chronos' library recorded with pick. I'm not even saying about performance itself. You just can't compare live bass with sampled one, at least for now. So my point was to get kind of the same drive by using combination of different heads which at the same time allowed me to sound more natural, so don't get confused by complicated way of getting all this stuff. It's all done for a reason. Now let's listen to these channels in solo and combined. all of them go to final processing bus. Basic cabinet simulation in the first place. Then I use multiband compressor and a wave tone shaper to get proper pressure on different bands, basically improving overall dynamics. NLS and mic mode to get some stereo randomization and saturation together with that warm low end. Valhalla Uber mod is used with low mix amount. Let me bring it up for you for a second so you can really hear effect itself. It's hard to explain, but I sort of use it to get richer tonal content. Then I shape the tone again using isotope ozone 5 equalizer. Don't mind me for using this one, it was easier to compare spectrum snapshots and do visual adjustments. CLA 76 in all mode, getting little more beef and pumping out of our bass. Little expansion of stereo image with isotope ozone 5 imager. And final correction of spectrum on mids together with some bands exclusively for side of the stereo. Here's the levels of project. When we're done, it's time to print the stem, but before you do that, be sure that you use long impulse lengths together with highest quality settings on denoiser if you decided to use one. Then do regular bounce from this bus marked for export. Next stop, drums project. Check that shit. So this one is gonna be the biggest one. Let me briefly explain what's going on here. Just as always, I use Superior Drummer 2 as a main kit, and because I use it in multi-out mode, I decided to add those output markers to each channel so you can figure out the routing. On top of that, we use 2 triggers for kick and 2 for snare with samples from Steven Slate Drums 4. Additional trigger for snare is Superior's Metal Foundry library, same as the main kit. All kicks and snares are routed to self-titled buses. Same goes for toms. Overheads and 2 room channels are routed to overheads bus. Basically it's gonna be the holder of our cymbals in final mix. Channels or buses with export marker in their names are routed to limiter bus. Same as other projects, we'll be only using it for printing stems. Limiter won't have any impact on stems. It's just to prevent total output from clipping during MIDI editing. Samplers themselves don't use any internal processing and there is nothing to review really, so I'll just leave preset files for them in additional files pack. There you will also find custom drum map written for this kit with all articulations. Speaking of MIDI programming, I pretty much used alteration between 127 and 120 velocity levels for kick. Snare hits have maximum velocity for the most parts, but I used lower values for blast beat part. Basically use whatever you feel sounds natural, just stick to 127 as your main level and alternate between lower values when needed. Cymbals are all maxed out, in only exception of hi-hat. I used open for articulation with pretty dynamic velocity all over the place. These low-level hits at the end is something that make hi-hat flow fuller, kind of filling the gaps between hits with some sort of cymbal feedback. Once MIDI is written for main kit, just copy it to other channels, delete unused articulations and decide if you need to give additional touches on velocity here and there. Last thing I'd wanted to say before we will go for processing review is that I will only demonstrate total difference by bypassing entire chains this time. I know some of you ain't gonna like it, but honestly guys, I don't build them consequentially, nor do I track history of putting stuff in there. So even though comparison of every plugin may seem to make sense, it really doesn't, at least not with my production logic. So let's start from Superior's kick. First thing is two-tone shaping equalizers. We make sound little more scooped and focused. CLA 76 with about 3 or 4 decibels of gain reduction with compensated output. It's basic and pretty transparent control of dynamics. NLS in Navo mode for bit of saturation. C4 with pretty fast attack and release to form proper attack on higher bands and control sonic pressure for low one. H-comp in parallel mode. There is about 2 decibels of gain reduction, but still I use pretty big value of punch, so effect is not as transparent as it may seem to be. Basically we get more punch and transient details. Kramer tape gives us fair amount of tape saturation which makes our kick little bit more natural and bright. Important to say that this plugin lies in post-fader zone, so channel level is basically gain stage for everything after 6th insert. Because of that I use last EQ as final level controller together with additional tone shifting. Now let's listen to the difference. We also have 3 sends to these FX channels, we'll get to them later. Moving on to ambience kick. Here I use stereo delay with 0 feedback. Basically we move our kick to stereo because of 13 milliseconds difference between left and right channel. 7 milliseconds delay for left channel represents entire track delay, which helps to avoid correlation of left channel with main kick. CLA with extreme compression to squash dynamics. As a result it gently sums up with main kick. Then we use EQ to bring down boxy mids. Kick DWWS22. CLA 76 for same dynamics squashing purposes. Saturn and clean tube mode with extreme drive settings, helps to get smooth and crispy distortion. And then I drop down outstanding mid-range. Kick 10 SSD. Here I only use Saturn and dual band mode to get unlinked distortion for both and shape the tone little bit. And now I'll kick sums up on self-titled bus. Here I only use multi-band compressor with first and third bands active. So we keep lows under control and also use sort of upward compression emphasizing attack on high mids. Moving on to snare drum, in this case, triggers form big part of the tone while superior samples act more like humanizer, so let's start from triggers first. Tama D6. With first move I reduced ringing mids. And Transient Designer helped me to reduce long snare tail. Snare 22 NRG. Here I just used same Transient Designer for same purposes. Mid-range resonance trigger. Name pretty much says it all. Important to note that here I used internal superior's pitch correction. If I'm correct, it's -1 semitone and 30 cents. Basically I just wanted to add one particular resonance and tried to relocate the pitch to hit the right spot. On channel itself I used this EQ to get rid of everything except for that mid-range with some tone shifts on top. Moving on to superior snares. Snare top. Single equalizer where I got rid of outstanding mids and made them highs little brighter. Snare bottom. Snare tone of this album has pretty solid feeling of those metal thingies under the drum, so processing of this channel is kind of cherry on the cake. With first move I got rid of lows which we don't really need in case of bottom mic, plus little drop of mids for some reason. First CLA 76 is used as gain booster / saturator. Compression is turned off. Second unit is smooth control of dynamics with about 1 decibel of gain reduction. Compression is activated this time. Then I used Transient Designer, and unlike previous units we actually use this one to expand the sustain. Last EQ is additional tone controller. Mids seem to be outstanding. Snare room. Pretty much the same kind of thing as kick ambience. So first plugin is same stereo delay with same settings. Then, 2 drops on resonating mids. CLA 76 with pretty extreme compression, about 10 decibels. It will help to make effective stereo delay kinda more natural and also form proper attack. And now all snares sums up on self-titled bus where will form proper tone out of the entire pack. First thing is multi-band compressor with about 3 decibels of gain reduction on each band. I used 10 decibels attenuation on input to give the plugin enough headroom for work, compensated that on output with equal amount. Then I use correction impulse, which is basically compilation of all tone shifting EQ movements. Right after I use Pro C with about 4 decibels of gain reduction to get additional control on dynamics, this time in a single band mode. Kramer tape is used for the same purpose as on kick, getting little bit of flux. Limiter in order to gain RMS a little and also give enough peak headroom for next module. NLS in spike mode with fair amount of drive, getting extra bit of saturation from this one. Then I use Pro Q in mid-side mode in a role of stereo enhancer. This way I can use output pan controller and make the sound much closer to center. We don't really need that much of that side content. Last limiter is peak level controller to avoid any clipping on stem. Same as on kick, we have sends to FX buses. Hi-hat. First element is correction impulse. Then I use multiband compressor to bring down outstanding mids and emphasize highs a little. Pro C makes our hi-hat fuller. And NLS in mic mode with fair amount of console saturation. Sends to Uber stereo and short reverb buses. Rack toms. Let me just say that during this review you can hear some sort of fizz on highs. That caused by using very low impulse lengths, so please ignore it. High values will fix the issue. Correction impulse. Transient designer to get rid of some sustain, it works as little transient forming move in front of compressor. And here is compressor itself. We use very slow attack with about 3 decibels of gain reduction, just subtle control of dynamics. Same goes for floor toms. The only difference is that now I use different correction. Now both channels go to self-titled bus where I used H-comp with pretty extreme settings in order to really pack both rack and floor toms together and form tight and punchy sound. Limiter is used for peak level control, most of the time it remains untriggered. Sends to FX buses from here. Moving on to overheads. Entire purpose of processing of these 3 channels is to form proper dynamics and filtering. So for overheads I use correction impulse, then subtle compression with SSL compressor, about 1 decibel of gain reduction. NLS in Navo mode with pretty extreme drive. It helps to get some saturation and make previous filtering sound more natural. Last EQ reduces outstanding resonances from snare bleed. Send to short reverb. Ambience close. Different tone correction in the first place. NLS in Navo mode for pretty much the same purposes as previous one. CLA 76 in Bluey mode mostly reacts to outstanding China and toms bleed, about 1 decibel of gain reduction. And same reduction of ringy bleed from snare. Ambience VAR. CLA 76 with extreme compression and saturation, getting common sort of destroyed sounding of room. Correction impulse. NLS for same old purposes. And tone correction in the end to bring down outstanding mids caused mostly by extreme compression and saturation. Now all three channels go to overheads bus. Here I used Pro Q to bring down some outstanding zones and make sound little brighter. Then I used Isotope EQ. This time I compared my spectrum with reference and tried to recreate it visually with bands. SSL compressor for overall control of dynamics. Slow attack and about 3 decibels of gain reduction. Right after I used multi-band compressor in order to reduce snare drum pop, so only second band works here. Last limiter controls peak dynamics. Actual limiting only triggered by tom hits. Send to Uber stereo channel. Now it's time for FX channels. Unfortunately we can't do solo addition of them channels because of the way how routing works in current version of Cubase, so I'll show it to you in the main mixing session. You can see that I kept them bypassed. That's because I'm running video capturing software together with Second Dot to record the audio, so with full project active I really hit the limits of my CPU. For drums long reverb I used Valhalla Room with these settings. EQ correction right after. For drums short reverb I used same plugin with different preset. It will give us pretty nice ambient presence. NLS in mic mode with extreme drive to get slightly destroyed and crispy sounding. Reduction of side low end. Drums Uber stereo. Transient designer helps to get more focused and emphasized content, which then will be processed by same scary sounding Uber mod. You'll see how it works soon. Here you can see levels and routing of the project. And since we're done, make sure that all used samples are loaded in main Superior Drummer Kit. Don't forget that we use catch mode in order to stay inside of our RAM limit. To make this process quicker, just use this time shifting cursor, shrink the part to 1 or 2 bars, bring down master fader because you don't want to hear what happens when you play that thing multiple times. I recommend at least 7 to make sure that all sample variations are loaded. Then hit Ctrl Z to cancel shrinking and boom, you have all samples loaded. Then set up render region, adjust impulse lengths to 0.2, activate oversampling wherever it's possible and start the mix down. Use channel batch export mode, set the flags for channels or buses with export markers in their names. So now it's time to put our stems together and mix it. Master processing will be done in the same project. All drum and bass stems are routed straight to master bus. Guitar-related stems are routed to self-titled bus, which also routed to master. 2 noise tracks go to noise bus which then go to master as well. I'll keep those muted for now in order to simplify video editing. Don't think that I'm trying to hide it. So let's start from kick. Here I used EQ to reduce outstanding zones. Then isotope exciter with only last band active. Fair amount of saturation will give us extra details and tightness in the mix. Last EQ is small but wide adjustment of lows. I used region automation to emphasize first hits here and there. I wanted to get some sort of first hit punch, so I just used scissors to separate single hits, applied boosts around 3 decibels only for separated regions, and then also applied short crossovers to create smooth volume transitions. From this channel we send signals to guitar and bass side chain compressors. Snare. Here I used our bass exciter to make lows punchy and get proper interaction with master bus. Because of the fact that this module is sensitive to clipping, I used to create extra headroom on output. It will be compensated in channel level, so when I'll do comparison of effects on this chain it may seem like snare becomes too quiet, while in reality it's just too loud without the processing. Little boost of mids right after so it cuts through the mix better. Send to guitar side chain compressor. On toms I only used this EQ in attempts to get fuller and cleaner sounding at the same time. By the way, because of the fact that I used high impulse lengths before mix down, fizz has disappeared. That's why I told you to use high values. Hi-hat. Here I use small adjustment of highs so it can cut through the mix better. NLS with extreme drive for same purpose. And stereo enhancer to narrow the stereo image. Basically I wanted to make hi-hat little closer to center but couldn't do that with panner. No any processing on overheads. Low end reduction on long reverb. And I also used region automation here. Second part of first section is 2 decibels lower, because snare starts to play faster and it sounded little dirty. This little FX pause is actually dropped 17 decibels down so we don't make our reverb too obvious for the listener. Then I return to -2 decibels drop for second section and actually bring that reverb up just a little for the lead part to get feeling of bigger space. Short reverb stays as it was with no processing. Same goes for Uber stereo. By the way, I also used automation for silent part. Plus 12 decibels to get noisy background for guitar. Same goes for bass, we'll get to it after processing review. So point of processing here is to make our bass cleaner and put it down in the mix. First element in chain is CLA 76 with slow release and about 9 decibels of gain reduction with compensated output. As a result we will get punchy feeling when bass kicks in and also smooth control of dynamics. Reduction of upper bass and lower mid-range, it just sounded sort of boomy and dirty to me. Sidechain compressor driven by kick, helps to link drums and bass together. About 1 or 2 decibels of gain reduction. Low-end adjustment with our bass exciter. And another adjustment of same zone, but this time with EQ. Speaking of automation, I used same region as drums Uber stereo to boost the noise. Check this out. Moving on to guitars. I didn't use processing on both rhythm channels, just region automation to bring down the volume for one of guitars during lead part, -2 decibels. By the way, this project can also work with only one double, just be sure to adjust the volume. I'd say +3 decibels or something like that. Choose wide double if you want to get wider sounding. Rhythm FX guitar. This audio belongs to lead guitar stem. I just separated and moved it to its own channel. So here I just used EQ. Much progressive. And yeah, I used -2.5 decibels attenuation of audio to get proper level in the mix. Processing of both lead and harmony lead is the same. I just use the CQ to get rid of the dirtiness. There is also region automation for both. This way I was able to get right amount of leads in the mix and also control amount of harmony, basically giving priority to main lead and only emphasized harmony where needed. In fact, I cut off intro of harmony guitar, it just sounded better this way. Lead guitar delay track uses same stem as main lead. First thing in chain is Pro Q and a roll of gain booster, plus 6 decibels. It's basically overall audio boost which I used in the mix on early stage. And here is delay itself. I didn't choose host BPM read mode because we have rapid tempo change from 195 BPM to 146, right where lead guitar starts. And I didn't want that alien effect caused by delay changing tempo, so delay time is dictated by plugin's parameter. Another reason for that is me being too excited about mixed automation. I forgot to import tempo map and started to cut stuff as it was. Didn't want to lose all that in a cost of proper tempo, which is not really important at this stage. Some chorus with Valhalla Uber mod. And stereo enhancer to get wider sounding. Exactly same processing for lead harmony delay. I only left 2 pieces of audio which I wanted to emphasize. Keeping both delays at the same time would be not the best idea. Octave lead. First of all, I reverse the phase of right channel to get wide stereo image and sort of separate this track from main lead itself. Remember that we used same source audio for reamping, even though it was pitched. There is usually still some random phase correlation, so I wanted to avoid the mess this way. Compressor makes dynamics more stable and prevent this track from jumping out of lead pack. Chorus. Bit of delay. And same equalization I used on leads. Now check out how entire pack sounds. So as I said, all guitar tracks are routed to self-titled bus. Here we use correction impulse as a final tone adjustment. And same kind of sidechain compressor we used on bass. This time we use both kick and snare to drive this thing. Now noise tracks. Some sort of that can be found on original album, so we simulate that thing too. First noise track is two CLA-76 compressors. I turn off input of first one to avoid massive destructions in case if some audio will be accidentally played through this chain. Second noise is generated by Valhalla Uber mod. Both face each other on noise some bus and go straight to master. And before we will go for that too, take a look at them level settings and routing one more time. Master processing is pretty simple. Let's do overall comparison without the limiter, this way all the gluing will be obvious. So first thing in chain is NLS bus. It will help to get bit of saturation and some sort of soft clipping. Important to say that I used incoming attenuation to get enough headroom for NLS. -5 decibels. And we actually compensated on the input of next plugin, multiband compressor. We use this one to glue our instruments together targeting different parts of spectrum. Multiband exciter and parallel mode. Same gluing purposes. Kramer tape for extra bit of tape saturation, this time in single channel mode. I used output attenuation to get enough headroom on next plugin. Compensation of that is included in final limiter gain value. SSL with slow attack and fast release, about 1 decibel of compression. Just gluing things together even more. Little reduction of 3 kHz. And final limiter. So that's pretty much it. And for those of you who want to get additional files pack, which includes full pack of Chronos patches, Cubase projects which I used in this video, full pack of impulses used in this guide, full pack of Pro Q presets, same pack of templates for Reaper, preset bank for Revolver 4, source DI and MIDI files together with pack of stems, presets for SSD4 and Superior Drummer with custom drum map for MIDI programming. You will find all of them shits in my private post on Patreon, which will be available after pledging $1. By doing this you will also get access for rest of my private content and help me keep doing what I do. Link is in the description. So hope you learned thing or two from this guide. See you next time.